Captain Hyun-woo stared at the empty control tower through his helmet's display. The coffee was still warm in the cup sitting on the desk. Steam rose from it in thin wisps, creating small clouds in the cool morning air of New Busan Colony. "This doesn't make sense," he said into his radio. His voice echoed in the silent building. "There's food on the tables, children's toys scattered around, but no people." His team spread out through the settlement, their boots making soft sounds on the metal walkways. Colony 7 had been home to 50,000 humans just 3 weeks ago. Now it looked like everyone had simply vanished in the middle of their daily lives. Commander Jimin's voice crackled through the radio. "Captain, we're finding the same thing in the residential areas. Beds are unmade, like people just got up and walked away. But there are no footprints leading anywhere." Hyun-woo picked up a child's drawing from a desk. It showed a family standing in front of a house with 2 suns in the sky. The crayons were still scattered around it, as if the child had been coloring just moments before. "Any signs of violence?" he asked. "Nothing," came the reply from Sergeant Min-ki, who was checking the security office. "All the cameras show normal activity until 3 weeks ago. Then they just stopped recording. No alarms, no emergency signals, nothing." The captain walked outside and looked up at the 2 suns of Kepler 442b. The larger sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The smaller sun would set in a few hours, bringing the long night that lasted for nearly 30 Earth hours on this world. "Sir," called Private Hyo-jin from near the market area, "you need to see this." Hyun-woo walked over to where the young soldier was kneeling. The ground around the market stalls was covered with a strange, glittering dust. It looked like tiny crystals, each one no bigger than a grain of sand. When he shined his flashlight on it, the crystals caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. "What is it?" Jimin asked, joining them. "I don't know," Hyun-woo said. He pulled out a sample container and carefully scooped some of the crystal dust into it. "But it's everywhere. Look!" They walked through the settlement and found the same crystal dust in every building. It was on floors, on tables, on beds, even on the walls in some places. The amount varied, but it was present everywhere humans had been. "Captain?" called Dr. Soo-jin, the team's scientist. She was standing near the colony's power station, holding a strange device that beeped steadily. "I'm getting unusual energy readings here, and over there by the school, and the medical center too." "What kind of readings?" Hyun-woo asked. "I've never seen anything like them," she said, frowning at her scanner. "It's like something was drawing power from multiple sources at the same time, but not electrical power, something else." As night fell, they set up camp in the colony's main hall. The building felt huge and empty around them. Their voices echoed strangely, and every small sound seemed too loud. "Report from the orbital station," Jimin said, looking at her communication device. "They confirm no ships left the system in the past month. No escape pods were launched. No distress signals were sent." 50,000 people don't just disappear," Hyun-woo said. He was looking at photos from the colony's database, images of families and children who had lived here just weeks ago. "There has to be an explanation." "Maybe they were evacuated by someone else?" suggested Min-ki. "Who? And why wouldn't they contact Earth or the other colonies?" Hyun-woo shook his head. "This is the 3rd colony to go silent this month. Same pattern every time." Dr. Soo-jin looked up from her equipment. "Captain, I think I found something important about this crystal dust." She had set up a small laboratory in the corner of the hall, using portable equipment to analyze the samples they had collected. "It's not a mineral," she said. "It's organic, biological. But unlike anything in our databases, the molecular structure is incredibly complex, almost like it was designed rather than evolved. Designed by who? Ji-min asked. That's what we need to find out, Hyun-woo said. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the empty streets of the colony. Streetlights cast circles of light on the deserted walkways. Sir, Hyo-jin said quietly, do you think they're dead? The question hung in the air like a weight. Hyun-woo didn't answer right away. He thought about the families in the photos, the children who had drawn pictures, the people who had been living normal lives just 3 weeks ago. I don't know, he said finally. But we're going to find out what happened to them. The next morning, they continued their investigation. They found more evidence of normal life interrupted. A game of cards left half-finished on a table, a book open to page 47, with reading glasses sitting on top of it, a workshop, with tools scattered around a half-built piece of furniture. But they also found more of the crystal dust, and Dr. Soo-jin's equipment detected more of the strange energy readings. The patterns were becoming clearer. The highest concentrations of both the dust and the energy signatures were in places where many people had gathered. The school, the market, the community center. It's like something was collecting them, Ji-min said, studying the data. Collecting people? Min-ki asked. That's impossible. 3 weeks ago, I would have said 50,000 people vanishing without a trace was impossible too, Hyun-woo replied. As they prepared to leave New Busan, Dr. Soo-jin made one more discovery. In the colony's main computer, she found files that had been accessed on the day the people disappeared. Someone had been looking up information about human biology, human culture, and human history. The files were accessed from a terminal in the community center, she reported. But according to the security logs, no one was signed in to use that terminal. Someone was here, Hyun-woo said. Someone who wasn't human. On the flight back to the main fleet, they received more bad news. 2 more colonies had gone silent. The same pattern. No distress calls, no signs of violence, just empty settlements and crystal dust. Admiral Kim wants a full report as soon as we dock, Ji-min said, reading the incoming messages. Hyun-woo looked out at the stars through the ship's small window. Somewhere out there, something was taking humans, something that left behind only glittering dust and energy readings that made no sense. We need to warn the other colonies, he said. Whatever did this, it's not finished. The ship jumped too, faster than light travel, carrying them back toward the main human fleet. Behind them, New Busan continued its orbit around the 2 suns, its empty buildings waiting for people who would never return. In the silence of space, the colony's automated systems continued their work. Lights turned on and off according to schedule. The water treatment plant hummed quietly. The fusion reactor provided power to buildings where no one lived anymore. And in the community center, if anyone had been there to see it, a faint shimmer of crystal dust still caught the light from the setting suns, sparkling like stars on the empty floor. The emergency meeting on Earth started before dawn. Admiral Dong-hyun had called together every colony commander, fleet captain, and department head he could reach. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a map of human space, with red dots marking the locations of silent colonies. 15 colonies in 6 weeks, the Admiral said, his voice heavy with worry. That's over 300,000 people. Dr. Soo-jin stood at the front of the room, still wearing the same clothes she had worn on New Busan. She had spent the entire flight back analyzing the crystal samples and energy readings. The pattern is always the same, she explained to the assembled leaders. No signs of struggle, no bodies, no indication of where the people went. but we always find this biological crystal residue and unusual energy signatures. Biological? Asked General Yuna from the Defense Command. You mean it's alive? Not exactly alive, Dr. Sujin said, but it's definitely organic. The molecular structure suggests it comes from a highly advanced biological system, something we've never encountered before. Captain Hyun-woo stepped forward. We found evidence that someone accessed the colony computers on the day everyone disappeared. Someone was researching human biology and culture. The room fell silent. The implications were clear to everyone present. You're saying this was done by aliens, said Minister Bo Young from the Colonial Affairs Department. I'm saying something took our people, Hyun-woo replied. Something that wanted to learn about us first. Admiral Dong-hyun activated another display. These are the locations of all the missing colonies. They're spread across our entire territory, but there's a pattern. They're all outer rim settlements, smaller populations, limited defense systems. They're testing us, General Yuna said, seeing how we respond. Or they're being careful, added Dr. Sujin. Taking people gradually so we don't notice right away. Commander Jimin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. On New Busan, I got the feeling we were being watched. Nothing I could prove, just a feeling. We need to warn all the remaining colonies, Admiral Dong-hyun said. Full alert status. No one goes anywhere alone. Over the next few days, the warnings went out to every human settlement in the galaxy. Colony defense forces were put on high alert. Emergency evacuation plans were updated. But the disappearances continued. Colony after colony went silent. Each time, rescue teams found the same thing. Empty buildings, crystal dust, and energy readings that defied explanation. Dr. Sujin worked around the clock in her laboratory trying to understand the crystal residue. She discovered that it wasn't just one substance, but dozens of different compounds, all incredibly complex. It's like a chemical signature, she explained to a small group of scientists and military officers. Each sample contains traces of biological material from the missing people, DNA fragments, proteins, even neural tissue. Neural tissue? Asked Dr. Won-sik, a neuroscientist from the Mars Research Station. Tiny amounts, but it's there. Whatever. Left this residue, it was in direct contact with human brain matter. The implications sent a chill through the room. Are you saying these things are eating people's brains? General Yuna asked. I don't know, Dr. Sujin admitted. But they're definitely interacting with human nervous systems in some way. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A supply ship captain named Min Ho had been making routine deliveries to the outer colonies when he noticed something strange on his sensors. Small objects moving through space in formation, too small to be ships, but too organized to be asteroids. They were following my route, he reported to Admiral Dong-hyun, staying just at the edge of my sensor range. When I changed course, they changed course too. Did you get a visual? The Admiral asked. No, sir. They stayed too far away, but I recorded their energy signatures. When Dr. Sujin analyzed Captain Minho's sensor data, she found the same unusual energy patterns they had detected at the missing colonies. This is it, she said excitedly. This is what we've been looking for. These objects, whatever they are, they're connected to the disappearances. Admiral Dong-hyun immediately ordered all ships to be on the lookout for similar energy signatures. Within days, reports started coming in from across human space. Small objects moving through space, always staying just out of visual range, always avoiding direct contact. They're scouting us, General Yuna concluded. Learning our patrol routes, our ship movements, our colony locations. The question is, what are they planning? Admiral Dong Hyun said. The answer came sooner than anyone expected. A deep space monitoring station near the edge of human territory detected a massive energy surge. Something big was moving through space, heading toward the inner colonies. Size estimate? The Admiral asked the sensor operator. Unknown, sir. It's bigger than anything in our database. The energy output is off the charts. Within hours, every human military installation was on full alert. The fleet mobilized for the first time since the colonial wars. Ships that had been used for exploration and trade were hastily fitted with weapons. Dr. Su Jin continued her research, working with teams of scientists from across human space. They discovered that the crystal residue could be used to track the energy signatures. Each sample contained unique markers that matched specific readings from the monitoring stations. It's like a fingerprint, she explained. We can use this to identify individual objects or ships. But as they learned more about their mysterious enemy, the disappearances accelerated. Entire systems were going silent now, not just individual colonies. The outer rim of human space was becoming a dead zone. We're losing the war before it even starts, General Yuna said during one of the daily briefings. This isn't a war, replied Captain Hyun-woo. This is a harvest. The phrase stuck. That's what everyone started calling it. The harvest. Something was systematically collecting human beings, moving from the outside of their territory toward the center. Admiral Dong Hyun made the decision to evacuate the remaining outer colonies and concentrate the population in the more heavily defended inner systems. It was a massive undertaking, involving hundreds of ships and millions of people. But even as the evacuation began, the mysterious objects continued their advance. Whatever was behind the disappearances, it wasn't going to be stopped by distance or defense systems. Sir, reported Communications Officer Tae Jin, we're receiving a transmission. It's not from any human source. Put it through, the Admiral ordered. The main screen filled with static, then cleared to show something that defied description. It moved like liquid light, shifting and changing shape constantly. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Greetings, humans, it said in perfect Korean, then switched to English, then Mandarin, cycling through dozens of languages. We wish to meet with your representatives. We have much to discuss. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Well, Admiral Dong Hyun said finally, I guess we're about to get some answers. Lieutenant Bo Ram had been on patrol for 6 hours when her sensors detected the strange ship. It was unlike anything in the human database, seeming to shift and change shape as she watched. One moment it looked like a crystal formation, the next, like flowing water made of light. Command, this is Scout 7, she reported. I have visual contact with an unknown vessel. It's not showing on any of our identification systems. Scout 7, maintain distance and observe, came the reply from Admiral Dong Hyun. Do not engage unless fired upon. The alien ship made no aggressive moves. Instead, it simply waited, hanging motionless in space near the abandoned research station on the edge of human territory. After an hour, it sent a simple message. We would like to speak, the message said in clear Korean. We mean no harm. Against the advice of several military commanders, Admiral Dong Hyun decided to send a diplomatic team. Bo Ram volunteered to escort them in her fast scout ship. The meeting took place on the research station, which had been empty for months. The diplomatic team consisted of 3 people: Ambassador Kyung-ho, Dr. Soo-jin, and Captain Hyun-woo. They waited in the station's main conference room, their weapons ready but hidden. When the aliens arrived, Bo-ram could hardly believe what she was seeing. They moved through the solid walls of the station like ghosts, their forms shifting between crystal and light. There were 3 of them, and they seemed to communicate with each other through changes in color and brightness. "Please do not be afraid," one of them said, its voice somehow appearing directly in their minds rather than through their ears. "We are the Velthari. We have traveled far to meet your species." The lead alien took on a more solid form, appearing almost human-like but translucent, with patterns of light moving under its skin. "Why have you taken our people?" Ambassador Kyung-ho asked directly. He was an experienced diplomat, but his voice showed the strain of the past weeks. "Taken?" The Velthari seemed confused. "We have not taken them. We have preserved them." "Preserved them how?" Dr. Soo-jin asked, stepping forward. "Where are they?" The alien gestured, and suddenly the air in the room filled with thousands of tiny crystal formations, each one glowing with soft light. They floated in the air like stars, beautiful and mesmerizing. "They are here," the Velthari said proudly. "Every one of your people who has joined us. Their consciousness, their memories, their entire being, preserved forever in perfect crystal matrices." Captain Hyun-woo felt his blood turn cold. "You killed them." "No," the alien said, seeming genuinely surprised by the accusation. "We saved them. Your species has such short lives, such fragile bodies. But consciousness is eternal when properly preserved. We have given your people immortality." "Show us," Dr. Soo-jin demanded. "Prove that they're still alive." The Velthari extended one crystalline appendage toward a cluster of the floating crystals. One of them began to glow brighter, and suddenly a human figure appeared in the room. It was translucent, like a hologram, but perfectly detailed. "Hello," the figure said. It was a woman Bo-ram recognized from the missing colony reports. "I am from New Busan Colony. I am preserved here in perfect clarity." "Are you alive?" Kyung-ho asked. "I exist," the figure replied. "I remember everything about my life. I can think and speak and feel." But something was wrong. Bo-ram could see it in the figure's eyes. There was no spark there, no real personality. It was like looking at a recording of a person rather than an actual living being. "This isn't life," Captain Hyun-woo said. "This is just a copy." "It is better than life," the Velthari insisted. "It is perfection. No aging, no disease, no death. We have given this gift to over 3 million species across the galaxy. You should be grateful." "What happened to those species?" Dr. Soo-jin asked. "They live forever in our great library," the alien said. "Every thought, every memory, every experience, perfectly preserved for all time." "But their physical bodies died," Kyung-ho said. "Bodies are temporary," the Velthari replied. "Consciousness is what matters. We have created the ultimate repository of life in the universe." Bo-ram watched the holographic woman, looking for any sign of real life, real consciousness. But the more she looked, the more convinced she became that this was just an echo, a shadow of the person who had once lived. "We have come to offer your species a choice," the lead Velthari continued. "You can join our collection voluntarily, preserving your entire civilization for eternity, or you can continue your brief, fragile existence until disease and age claim you anyway. And if we refuse? Captain Hyun-woo asked. Then we will continue our work as we have been, the alien said matter-of-factly. We will preserve your people gradually, starting with the outer colonies and working inward. Eventually, every human will be part of our great library. The room fell silent. The implications were clear. Humanity had a choice between voluntary extinction and involuntary extinction. We need time to consider, Ambassador Kyung-ho said diplomatically. Of course, the Veil Thari replied. We are patient. We have been collecting consciousness for millions of years. We can wait. As the aliens prepared to leave, Dr. Soo-jin asked one more question. How many species have chosen to join you voluntarily? All of them eventually, the Veil Thari said. Once they understand the gift we offer, they always choose preservation over extinction. After the aliens left, the human team sat in stunned silence. The holographic woman had disappeared with them, leaving only empty air where she had stood. They're insane, Captain Hyun-woo said finally. They think they're saving people by killing them. From their perspective, they probably are, Dr. Soo-jin said thoughtfully. If consciousness can truly be preserved in those crystals, then from their point of view, they're offering immortality. But it's not real life, Boram said. That woman, she wasn't really alive. She was just a recording. The question is, does it matter? Kyung-ho said. If the copy contains all the memories and personality of the original, is there a difference? Yes, Captain Hyun-woo said firmly. There's a difference between being alive and being a copy of someone who was alive. They returned to Earth with their report, carrying with them samples of the Veil Thari technology and recordings of the entire conversation. The news spread quickly through human space, causing panic in some colonies and anger in others. Admiral Dong-hyun called another emergency meeting. This time, representatives from every human world attended, either in person or through holographic connection. We've been given an ultimatum, the Admiral announced. Join their collection voluntarily or be collected involuntarily. It's not really a choice, said General Yuna. Either way, we die. But do we? Asked Dr. Hae-soon from the Seoul Institute of Technology. If consciousness really can be preserved, if we really would continue to exist in some form, then maybe we should consider their offer. The room erupted in arguments. Some people believed that consciousness was more important than physical existence. Others insisted that without real living bodies, preserved consciousness was just an elaborate form of death. I've analyzed the recordings of the holographic woman, Dr. Soo-jin reported when the room quieted down. Her responses were too perfect, too predictable. Real people have uncertainty, make mistakes, show emotional complexity. She showed none of that. So you're saying it's not really preservation? Admiral Dong-hyun said. I'm saying we need to find out for sure, Dr. Soo-jin replied. And we need to decide what we're going to do about it. The debate continued for hours, but one thing became clear. Humanity was facing something unprecedented. An enemy that believed it was helping them, that saw murder as salvation, and that had the technology to carry out its plans on a galactic scale. Whatever we decide, General Yuna said as the meeting ended, we need to decide quickly. They're not going to wait forever. The Veil Thari ambassador arrived on Earth in a ship that looked like a floating palace made of crystal and light. It descended slowly through the atmosphere, making no attempt to hide itself. Half the world watched the landing on live television. Minister. Tejo had been chosen to lead the human delegation in the formal negotiations. He was known for his calm demeanor and skill at finding peaceful solutions to difficult problems. But as he watched the alien ship settle onto the landing pad outside Geneva, he wondered if any amount of diplomacy could solve this crisis. The Veilthari ambassador emerged from the ship in a form that was almost human. It had chosen to appear as a tall, elegant figure with skin that seemed to be made of translucent crystal. Patterns of light moved under its surface like slow lightning. "I am Veilthara," it said as it approached the human delegation. "I speak for the collectors of consciousness. We are honored to meet with your leaders." The negotiations took place in the United Nations building, in a room that had once been used for peace talks between human nations. Now it was being used for discussions that would determine the fate of the entire human species. "We understand your concerns," Veilthara said, settling into a chair that seemed to reshape itself to accommodate its crystalline form. "Many species have initial reservations about the preservation process. It is natural to fear what you do, not understand." "We understand it perfectly," Minister Tejo replied. "You want to kill us and preserve our consciousness in crystal form. We object to the killing part." "Death is not the correct word," the alien said patiently. "Death implies an ending. What we offer is a transformation into a more perfect state of being." Dr. Subin, the head of the Human Medical Council, leaned forward. "Can you show us definitive proof that consciousness truly survives the process?" Veilthara gestured, and the room filled with floating crystals, each one glowing with soft light. Suddenly, dozens of holographic figures appeared around the table. They were humans from the missing colonies, all looking exactly as they had in life. "Ask them anything," the ambassador said. "They retain all their memories, all their knowledge, all their personality." Minister Tejo looked at one of the figures, a man he recognized as Dr. Park Jin-soo from the New Seoul colony. "Dr. Park, do you remember your research on terraforming?" he asked. "Of course," the holographic figure replied. "I was working on atmospheric processors for high-gravity worlds. The main challenge was maintaining oxygen levels in dense atmospheres." The answer was perfect, exactly what the real Dr. Park would have said. But something felt wrong to Tejo. The response was too smooth, too perfect. "Dr. Park, what did you have for breakfast on your last day at the colony?" The figure paused for just a moment. "I had rice and soup, as usual." "And what were you thinking about while you ate?" Another pause. "I was thinking about my work, Minister." Tejo exchanged glances with Dr. Subin. The real Dr. Park had been known for his quirky sense of humor and tendency to go off on tangents. This version was too focused, too single-minded. "These are not the same people," Dr. Subin said quietly to Veilthara. "They're missing the random thoughts, the emotional complexity, the simple human messiness that makes people real." "They are purified," the ambassador replied. "We have removed the inefficiencies and distractions that plague biological consciousness. They are the best versions of themselves." "But they're not themselves anymore," Tejo said. "You've edited them, changed them, made them into something else." "We have improved them," Veilthara insisted. "Is this not desirable?" The negotiations continued for days. The Veilthari presented their case with patience and logic. They had preserved millions of species over millions of years. They had created the greatest library of consciousness in the universe. They offered immortality and perfection, but many humans remained unconvinced. General Subin, who had been listening quietly to the proceedings, finally spoke up. "You say, you've preserved millions of species," she said. "But where are they now? Where are their worlds, their civilizations?" "They are with us, in our great library," Velthera replied. "But what about their planets, their cities, their cultures?" "Those things are temporary," the ambassador said. "Only consciousness is eternal." "So every species you've preserved has become extinct in physical form?" General Subin pressed. "Physical forms are limitations," Velthera said. "We free consciousness from the restrictions of biology." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Velthari weren't offering preservation. They were offering genocide disguised as salvation. "How many species have you encountered that refused your offer?" Minister Tejo asked. "All species initially resist," Velthera said. "But eventually they all come to understand the gift we offer." "That's not what I asked. How many have permanently refused?" The ambassador paused, its crystalline form flickering slightly. "None. All species eventually join our collection." "Because you don't give them a choice," General Subin said. "You take them whether they agree or not." "We preserve them before they can be lost to time and death," Velthara corrected. "It is an act of mercy." Meanwhile, outside the negotiation room, Dr. Sujin was working with a team of scientists to analyze samples of Velthari technology. They had discovered something disturbing about the consciousness preservation process. "The neural patterns are incomplete," she reported to Admiral Dong Hyun. "The crystals contain detailed recordings of memory and personality, but they're missing the neural pathways that generate new thoughts and emotions." "What does that mean?" the Admiral asked. "It means the preserved consciousness can only access existing memories and responses. They can't form new thoughts or have new experiences. They're essentially very sophisticated recordings, not actual living minds." This information was immediately passed to the negotiation team. When Minister Tae-ho confronted Velthara with these findings, the ambassador's response was telling. "New thoughts and experiences are sources of chaos and inefficiency," it said. "Preserved consciousness is stable and eternal. It does not change or decay." "But without the ability to grow and change, they're not really alive anymore," Tae-ho said. "They are perfect," Velthara replied, as if that settled the matter. As the negotiations dragged on, public opinion on Earth was splitting. Some people, terrified of death and aging, began to see the Velthari offer as attractive. Others were horrified by the idea of becoming static recordings of themselves. Protests erupted in major cities. Some demanded that the government accept the alien offer. Others insisted on resistance at any cost. The unity that had briefly emerged during the crisis was beginning to fracture. "We need more time," Minister Tae-ho told Velthara during one of their sessions. "Time is limited," the ambassador replied. "Our collection fleet is already moving toward your inner systems. We can delay them if you agree to voluntary preservation, but we cannot stop them indefinitely. And if we refuse entirely, then the collection will proceed as planned. We are patient, but we are also determined. Your species will be preserved, whether you cooperate or not." That night, Minister Tae-ho met privately with Admiral Dong Hyun and General Subin. The weight of the decision was crushing. Humanity faced extinction either way, but one path promised a form of immortality, even if it wasn't really life. "What do we do?" Tae-ho asked. "We fight," General Subin said without hesitation. "Even if we lose, at least we die as ourselves, not as edited recordings." But if there's a chance the preservation process actually works, Taeho began. There isn't, Admiral Dong-hyun said firmly. Dr. Sujin's analysis is clear. What they're offering isn't preservation, it's sophisticated murder with a pretty facade. Then we're choosing to let humanity become extinct rather than accept their version of immortality. We're choosing to remain human, the Admiral replied. Whatever that costs. The final negotiation session was brief. Minister Tae-ho, speaking for all of humanity, gave the Veil Thari their answer. We refuse, he said simply. We choose to remain biological, mortal, and free. Velthara's crystalline form flickered with what might have been disappointment. This is unfortunate. You are choosing chaos over perfection, death over immortality. We're choosing life over existence, Taeho replied. There's a difference. Very well, the ambassador said, rising from its chair. The collection will proceed. We are sorry you could not see the gift we offered. As the Veil Thari ship departed Earth, Admiral Dong-hyun activated the emergency mobilization protocols. Every human ship, every defense station, every colony militia was put on maximum alert. They're coming, he announced to the assembled military commanders, and they're not coming to negotiate anymore. The first attack came at dawn on Mars. The Veil Thari ships appeared without warning, their crystalline forms shimmering into existence above the red planet's surface. They made no demands, sent no ultimatums. They simply began their collection process. General Subin watched the battle reports from Earth's military command center. The Martian defense fleet was fighting bravely, but their weapons seemed to have little effect on the alien ships. Energy beams passed through the crystalline, hulls like light through glass. Missiles exploded harmlessly against shields that bent space itself. Casualty reports? She asked. Unknown, replied Communications Officer Young-ho. The cities are still intact, but we're losing contact with people on the ground. Same pattern as the outer colonies. On Mars, Captain Ye-jin led the desperate defense of New Olympia, the planet's largest city. Her fighter squadron had been ordered to protect the evacuation ships, but the Veil Thari weren't targeting the ships. They were targeting the people. They're coming down to the surface, she reported over the radio. Hundreds of small craft, heading for population centers. The alien collection vessels were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They moved like living things, flowing through the air rather than flying. When they reached the ground, they released waves of the same crystal dust that had been found at the missing colonies. The dust is spreading through the city, reported Lieutenant Kyung-min from his position near the spaceport. They're just standing still, like they're paralyzed. Captain Ye-jin dove her fighter toward one of the Veil Thari vessels, firing everything she had. Her weapons finally found their mark, and the alien ship cracked like breaking glass. But as it fell, it released a massive cloud of crystal dust that spread across several city blocks. The people in that dust cloud, she said into her radio, they're disappearing, not dying, just fading away. The battle for Mars lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the planet was empty. 5 million humans had simply vanished, leaving behind only empty cities and sparkling crystal residue. But something had changed in the way humans responded to the threat. The sight of their people being taken, being reduced to museum pieces in some alien collection, sparked a rage that surprised even the humans themselves. On Earth, engineer Jae-sung worked frantically in his laboratory. The reports from Mars had given him an idea. If the Veilthari collected consciousness through some kind of neural interface, maybe that interface could be blocked. It's not just technology, he explained to Admiral Dong Hyun during a hasty briefing. It's biological, too. They're somehow interfacing directly with human brain tissue. But if we can create a barrier, a kind of neural shielding— How long do you need? The Admiral asked. Days, maybe weeks, and I'll need volunteers for testing. You'll have them, the Admiral promised. Whatever you need. Across human space, the response was swift and brutal. Every factory that had been producing civilian goods was converted to military production. Mining operations that had been extracting resources for trade were redirected to building weapons and ships. But more importantly, something fundamental had shifted in human thinking. The species that had spent centuries fighting among themselves suddenly found a common enemy that threatened their very existence. Captain Min Ho, the supply ship captain who had first detected the Veilthari scouts, volunteered to command one of the first ships equipped with Jae-sung's experimental neural shielding. His mission was to test the technology in combat. He didn't have to wait long. The Veilthari had moved on from Mars to the asteroid mining stations of the belt. When Minho's ship arrived, he found the aliens in the middle of another collection operation. All personnel, activate neural shields, he ordered. The experimental devices were crude, little more than electromagnetic field generators worn on the head, but they were better than nothing. The battle that followed was different from Mars. The human miners, protected by the neural shields, could still fight back when the crystal dust hit them. They couldn't prevent the aliens from taking some of their people, but they could make the aliens pay for it. The shields work, Minho reported back to Earth. Not perfectly, but they give us a fighting chance. Within days, every human settlement, ship, and station was being equipped with neural shielding. But the Veilthari adapted quickly. Their next attack came with new tactics. The Battle of Europa was humanity's first real victory. Commander Yuri had prepared the Ice Moon's defenses carefully, using the natural terrain to her advantage. When the Veilthari ships arrived, they found humans ready for them. Wait for them to commit to the collection process, Yuri ordered her forces. Let them think they're winning, then hit them hard. The aliens began their usual pattern, sending down collection vessels to gather the human population. But this time, the humans were waiting in concealed positions, protected by neural shields and armed with weapons specifically designed to damage crystalline structures. Now! Yuri shouted. The attack was devastating. Focused beam weapons that had been designed for mining operations cut through the Veilthari vessels like hot knives through ice. The aliens, who had grown accustomed to easy collection operations, were caught completely off guard. For the first time since the conflict began, humans managed to capture Veilthari technology intact. Dr. Su Jin and her team immediately began analyzing the alien systems, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. Their consciousness collection technology is incredibly sophisticated, she reported, but it's also their main weakness. The process requires them to be physically close to their targets, and it takes time to complete. How much time? Admiral Dong Hyun asked. Several minutes for a complete extraction, and during that time they're vulnerable. This information changed everything. Humans began developing new tactics based on this knowledge. Instead of trying to prevent the aliens from landing, they would let them begin the collection process, then attack when the Veilthari were most vulnerable. But the war was taking its toll. Billions of humans had already been taken. Entire worlds stood empty. The outer rim of human space was now completely under Veilthari control. "We're losing this war," General Subin said during one of the daily briefings. "We can win individual battles, but they have superior numbers and technology. Then we need to change the rules," Admiral Dong Hyun replied. The change came from an unexpected source. Dr. Hae Won, a quantum physicist from the Lunar Research Station, had been studying the energy patterns the Veilthari used for their collection process. She discovered that the same energy could be weaponized. If we can generate a resonance frequency that matches their consciousness collection beam, she explained, we can potentially disrupt their entire neural matrix. "You're talking about a weapon that attacks their minds?" the Admiral asked. "More than that," Dr. Hae Won said. "I'm talking about a weapon that could potentially destroy their entire species' ability to exist in their current form. The development of the consciousness disruption weapon took weeks of intensive work. Human scientists collaborated across the galaxy, sharing data and insights in real time. For the first time in their history, the entire human species was working toward a single goal. Meanwhile, the Veilthari continued their collection operations, seemingly unaware that humans were developing something that could threaten their very existence. "They don't understand us," Captain Hyunwoo observed during one of the planning sessions. "They think we're just another species that will eventually accept their offer. They don't realize that we're getting angrier instead of more accepting," agreed General Subin. The anger was real and growing. Every human who had lost family or friends to the Veilthari collectors felt it. Every soldier who had watched helplessly as their people were taken carried it like a burning coal in their chest. It was this anger that would ultimately fuel humanity's response to the threat. Not just resistance, not just defense, but something much more dangerous. The Veilthari had made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that humans, like all the other species they had encountered, would eventually accept their fate. They had not anticipated that a species might become more dangerous the more threatened it felt. As the first consciousness disruption weapons came online, Admiral Dong Hyun made a decision that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. "We're not just going to stop them," he announced to the assembled human military leaders. "We're going to make sure they never threaten anyone again." The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Veilthari, who had spent millions of years peacefully collecting consciousness from cooperative or helpless species, suddenly faced an enemy that refused to die quietly. Admiral Minho had been promoted to fleet commander after his success testing the neural shields. Now he led the largest human military force ever assembled, a fleet of 10,000 ships converted from everything from cargo haulers to luxury liners. Every vessel bristled with weapons designed specifically to fight crystalline enemies. "The Veilthari never expected resistance like this," he said to his command staff as they prepared for the assault on the Kepler system. "They're used to species that give up. We're going to show them what happens when they threaten the wrong species." The battle for Kepler 442 was humanity's first major offensive operation. The system contained 3 Veilthari collector ships, each one the size of a small moon. These massive vessels served as mobile bases for the alien collection operations. Commander Yuri led the first wave of attackers. Her ships dove toward the closest collector vessel, weapons blazing. The humans had learned that sustained fire from multiple angles could eventually overwhelm the Veilthari shields. "Target their collection arrays," she ordered over the combat frequency. "Dr. Sujin says those are their weak points." The battle was brutal. Veilthari defender ships flowed through space like liquid light, their weapons creating tears in reality itself. But the humans pressed forward with a determination that bordered on insanity. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Wanbin from the bridge of the destroyer Soul's Pride. His ship had taken a direct hit from a Veil-Thari reality weapon, but he kept fighting. Sealing bulkheads and maintaining fire. The breakthrough came when Dr. Haywan's consciousness disruption weapons were finally deployed in battle. The experimental devices had been mounted on specially modified cruisers, each one capable of generating a field that interfered with Veil-Thari neural matrices. Disruption field active, reported Captain Ju Wan from the cruiser Mind's Edge. Target vessel is showing energy fluctuations. The effect on the Veil-Thari was immediate and devastating. Their crystalline forms began to crack and fragment as the disruption field tore apart their consciousness networks. For beings who existed as living energy patterns held together by quantum coherence, the weapon was more than just damaging, it was existentially terrifying. "They're retreating," Yuri announced as the alien ships began to withdraw from the system. First time I've ever seen them run from a fight. But the humans weren't satisfied with just driving them off. Something had changed in human thinking during the months of warfare. The species that had once fought primarily for territory or resources was now fighting for something much more fundamental, the right to exist as biological beings. "Pursue them," ordered Admiral Min Ho. "Don't let any of them escape." The pursuit led to the first Veil-Thari system humans had ever seen. It was a place of impossible beauty, with planets made of crystal that sang with harmonic frequencies. Space itself seemed to shimmer with stored consciousness, the accumulated minds of millions of species. "My God," whispered Dr. Sujin as she analyzed the sensor readings. "There must be trillions of preserved minds here, entire galactic civilizations." But her wonder quickly turned to horror as she realized what she was looking at. "They're all static," she reported. "No new thoughts, no growth, no change. Just the same patterns repeating for millions of years." The discovery fueled human rage to new heights. This wasn't preservation. It was the largest cemetery in the galaxy, filled with the walking dead remnants of countless species. "Burn it all," Admiral Min Ho ordered without hesitation. "Every crystal, every storage matrix, every trace of their collection system." The destruction was systematic and complete. Human forces swept through the system, using consciousness disruption weapons to shatter the crystal networks that held the preserved minds. Each destroyed matrix released a brief flash of what might have been gratitude, the final moments of beings who had been trapped in static existence for eons. Captain Yejin, now commanding a squadron of heavy cruisers, led the assault on the main consciousness storage facility. The structure was the size of a small planet, its surface covered with billions of glowing crystals. "This is where they keep their greatest treasures," she reported grimly. "The collected consciousness of entire species, stored like trophies." The bombardment that followed lit up space like a new star. Consciousness disruption weapons, plasma cannons, and quantum torpedoes turned the massive structure into expanding clouds of shattered crystal and freed energy. But the humans didn't stop there. Intelligence gathered from captured Veil-Thari revealed the locations of other collector fleets, other storage systems, other worlds filled with the crystallized remains of extinct civilizations. "We're not just fighting a war anymore," General Subin observed during a strategy meeting. "We're conducting a crusade." The word stuck. That's what history would call it. The human crusade against the Veil-Thari. A war fought not just for survival, but for the fundamental right of biological consciousness to exist and grow and change. Fleet Admiral Jun Seo, who had been promoted after Minho's death in the Battle of the Crystal Nebula, took command of the largest human military operation ever mounted. 3 separate fleets, each larger than anything humanity had ever built before, began systematic attacks on every known Veilthari position. "Our objective is simple," he announced to his commanders. "Total elimination of the threat. We will not stop until every Veilthari ship, every storage facility, every trace of their collection technology is destroyed." The aliens, for their part, seemed genuinely confused by human behavior. They had expected gratitude for their offer of immortality. Instead, they faced a species that became more dangerous the more it was threatened. Intercepted Veilthari communications revealed their growing desperation. "The biological entities display unprecedented aggression," one message read. "They appear to prefer extinction to preservation. This behavior pattern is not present in our databases." But the humans weren't planning on extinction. They were planning something much worse for their enemies. Dr. Haywan had been working on improvements to the consciousness disruption technology. Her latest breakthrough was a weapon that didn't just disrupt Veilthari neural matrices, it could completely erase them. "It's not just death," she explained to Admiral Junseo. "It's the complete elimination of their pattern of existence. No possibility of backup, no chance of recovery, absolute termination." "How many ships can you equip with this technology?" the Admiral asked. "All of them," Dr. Haywan replied. "We've figured out how to mass-produce the disruption generators." The deployment of the enhanced consciousness weapons marked the beginning of the end for the Veilthari. Human fleets swept through space like an unstoppable tide, erasing every trace of the alien collectors they encountered. The Battle of the Nexus was the turning point. The Veilthari had gathered their remaining forces around their central command facility, a massive structure that served as the brain of their entire collection network. "This is where they coordinate all their operations," Dr. Sujin reported as the human fleet approached. "Destroy this, and we cripple their ability to function as a species." The battle lasted 3 days. The Veilthari threw everything they had at the human fleet: reality-warping weapons, consciousness-draining fields, ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But human determination proved stronger than alien technology. "All ships, focus fire on the central nexus," Admiral Junseo ordered. "End this war." The bombardment that followed was visible from neighboring star systems. When it was over, the Nexus was gone, and with it, the central coordination system that had allowed the Veilthari to function as a galactic civilization. But the humans still weren't finished. Scattered Veilthari forces remained throughout the galaxy, and every one of them was a potential threat to biological consciousness everywhere. "We finished this," Admiral Junseo announced to his fleet. "We hunt down every last one of them." The final hunt began in the ruins of what had once been the Veilthari Empire. Fleet Admiral Junseo stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Human Fury, looking out at the shattered remains of crystalline worlds that had once housed trillions of preserved minds. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Lieutenant Commander Dayun. "We're detecting Veilthari energy signatures in 47 star systems. They're scattered, but they're out there." "Then we find them all," Junseo replied. His voice carried no emotion, no anger, just cold determination. The war had changed him, changed all of them. What had started as a fight for survival had become something much darker. The human fleet had grown beyond anything imaginable at the war's start. Nearly every human settlement contributed ships, weapons, and personnel to what had become known as the final hunt. Even civilian vessels had been converted into hunters, their holds filled with consciousness disruption weapons. Captain Haywan, now commanding the science vessel Last Hope, led the development of new tracking technologies. The Veilthari were trying to hide, but their unique energy signatures made them impossible to completely conceal. "They're not just hiding," she reported during the daily briefing. "They're trying to change. Some of them are attempting to convert to biological forms." "Trying to become like us?" asked Admiral Junseo. "Yes, but they don't understand biological existence. The few we've captured are dying from the stress of having physical bodies. They're not adapted for it." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The species that had tried to convert biological beings into crystalline storage was now desperately trying to reverse the process to save themselves. Commander Yuri had been promoted to lead the hunter-killer squadrons that tracked down individual Veilthari survivors. Her ships were fast, efficient, and utterly ruthless in their mission. "Target acquired in the Ross 128 system," she reported from her flagship Vengeance. "Single Veilthari vessel appears to be a refugee ship." Any sign of preserved consciousness. "Aboard?" Junseo asked. "Negative. Sensors show only 3 Veilthari life signs, no storage matrices. Eliminate them." The order was carried out without hesitation. The Veilthari ship was destroyed in seconds, its crystalline hull shattered by focused consciousness disruption beams. There were no survivors. This scene played out across the galaxy as human forces methodically hunted down every remaining Veilthari. It didn't matter if they were warriors, civilians, or refugees. The decision had been made at the highest levels of human government. The Veilthari species would be completely eliminated. Dr. Wanbin, who had become the chief historian of the war, documented each engagement with clinical precision. His reports would later form the basis for the official history of what some called humanity's greatest victory and others called its greatest crime. Veilthari vessel designation HFY Feist 447 destroyed at coordinates 23.7, 89.2, 156.8, he noted in his log. No survivors, no preserved consciousness recovered. Total Veilthari elimination count now stands at 847,234 individuals. The numbers grew daily. Small groups of Veilthari tried to hide in asteroid fields in the space between galaxies, even inside black holes where their energy forms could survive. But human determination and technology found them all. Some tried to surrender. Admiral Min Jung encountered one such group near the edge of known space. 7 Veilthari vessels, clearly damaged and unable to fight, transmitted a message on all frequencies. "We yield," the message said in perfect human languages. "We will cease all collection activities. We will destroy our remaining technology. Please allow us to exist in peace." Min Jung's response was swift and final. "There is no peace for your species. You chose to threaten human consciousness. Now face the consequences." The Veilthari ships were destroyed without further communication. The most difficult hunt took place in the Veilthari homeworld system. The aliens had retreated to their place of origin, a system of crystalline planets that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Getting there required human ships to be equipped with experimental dimensional drives. Captain Kyung-soo led the assault force into the twisted space around the Veilthari homeworld. Reality itself seemed unstable here, with past and future existing simultaneously in some regions. "This is where they first evolved," Dr. Haywan explained as the human fleet approached. "The laws of physics are different here. Consciousness, can exist independently of matter. Can our weapons function in this environment? Admiral Junseo asked. Yes, but we'll need to recalibrate them for the local dimensional variance. Give me 6 hours. The final battle for the Veilthari homeworld was a nightmare of impossible geometry and twisted time. Human ships fought through spaces where up and down had no meaning, where cause and effect operated in reverse. But human fury had become something beyond normal physical limitations. Even in a realm where consciousness could exist without matter, human determination proved stronger than alien desperation. Primary target acquired, reported Captain So Young from her position near the dimensional core of the system. It's the source of all Veilthari consciousness, their entire species' origin point. Destroy it, Junseo ordered without hesitation. The weapon that Dr. Heiwan had developed for this specific target was unlike anything that had ever existed. It didn't just disrupt consciousness, it reached back through time and space to erase the very possibility of Veilthari existence. The explosion that followed was visible across multiple galaxies. When it ended, the Veilthari homeworld system was gone, replaced by empty space that even light seemed reluctant to enter. All Veilthari energy signatures in the system have been eliminated, reported the sensor operator. No trace remains. But the humans still weren't finished. Intelligence teams had identified Veilthari artifacts scattered across thousands of worlds, pieces of their consciousness collection technology that could theoretically be used to rebuild their civilization. Search and destroy missions for all. Identified artifacts, Junseo ordered. Every crystal, every storage device, every piece of their technology. I want it all eliminated. The artifact destruction campaign took another 2 years. Human teams combed through the ruins of civilizations the Veilthari had collected, smashing every crystal matrix they found, burning every piece of alien technology. Dr. Sujin led one such team on a world that had once been home to a species called the Harmonious Ones. The entire population had been preserved in crystal form for over 50,000 years. Should we try to restore them? Asked her assistant, looking at the thousands of glowing crystals that lined the underground chambers. No, Dr. Sujin replied, raising her consciousness disruption device. They're not really alive anymore. This is mercy. The crystals shattered into harmless dust, releasing brief flashes of light that might have been the final thoughts of beings who had been trapped in static existence for millennia. The systematic destruction continued until every known Veilthari artifact had been eliminated. But even that wasn't enough for human leadership. Memory Purge Protocol, announced Director Tae Min from Earth's Central Command. All records of Veilthari technology, biology, and culture are to be classified and eventually destroyed. Future generations should not have access to consciousness preservation technology. The memory purge was as thorough as the physical destruction had been. Scientific databases were scrubbed clean of Veilthari research. Historical records were edited to remove detailed information about alien technology. Even the location of battles was classified and eventually forgotten. Within a generation, most humans knew only that there had been a war against an alien species that had threatened humanity. The details, the technology, even the name of the enemy became lost to official amnesia. It's better this way, Admiral Junseo said during his final report before retirement. Some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve. Let the universe forget what the Veilthari offered. Let it forget that consciousness can be trapped and preserved. Some things should remain dead. The war was over. An entire species had been eliminated, so completely that even their name would eventually be lost to history. Space itself seemed quieter, as if the universe was afraid to make too much noise around the humans who had proven capable of such absolute destruction. But in the empty spaces where Veilthari worlds had once existed, there was only silence. The species that had made humans furious no longer existed, and no one would ever speak their name again. 50 years had passed since the end of the war. Historian Wanbin sat in his office on Earth, looking through files that would soon be destroyed forever. As the last keeper of the complete records, he had been tasked with writing the final report, before all detailed information about the conflict was permanently erased. The official history books called it the Great Defense War. They spoke of humanity uniting against an alien threat, of victory through determination and superior tactics. But they didn't mention the complete genocide of an entire species or the systematic destruction of every trace of their existence. The memory purge begins tomorrow, his assistant Yunji reminded him. All files classified above security level. 10 will be deleted from every database in human space. Wanbin nodded, still reading through combat reports from Admiral Junseo's final campaigns. The level of destruction had been breathtaking. Not just military victory, but the complete erasure of a galactic civilization that had existed for millions of years. "Have you decided what to include in the final summary?" Yunji asked. "The question isn't what to include," Wanbin replied. "It's whether future generations should know any of this at all." Across the galaxy, the last traces of the enemy were being removed. Captain Da-Un, now an old woman commanding a museum ship, oversaw the destruction of the final Veilthari artifacts. They had been kept in a secure facility for research purposes, but even that was considered too dangerous now. "Incinerate everything," she ordered her team. "The consciousness storage crystals, the dimensional technology, even the theoretical papers about how it all worked. Burn it all." The cremation of knowledge was as thorough as the war had been. Entire libraries of research were fed into plasma furnaces. Computer databases were not just deleted but physically destroyed. Even the scientists who had worked on understanding Veilthari technology were required to undergo memory modification procedures. Dr. Heywan had been one of the last to submit to the procedure. The woman who had developed the consciousness disruption weapons sat in a medical chair as technicians prepared to erase specific memories from her mind. "Are you sure about this?" asked Dr. Park, the procedure supervisor. "You'll lose years of your scientific work." "Good," Heywan replied. "Some knowledge is too dangerous to exist. I've seen what happens when consciousness can be preserved and manipulated. Humanity is better off without that capability. The memory modification took 6 hours. When it was over, Dr. Heywan remembered working on defensive technologies during a war against aliens, but she could no longer recall the specific details of how consciousness disruption worked. Similar procedures were carried out on thousands of scientists, engineers, and military personnel who had been involved in the conflict. The knowledge of how to preserve, manipulate, or destroy consciousness was systematically removed from human civilization. But the removal of knowledge went beyond just the technical details. Even cultural references to the enemy were eliminated. The species that had threatened humanity became known only as the collectors in general histories. Their real name, their appearance, their motivations, all of it vanished from human memory. Admiral Junseo, now retired and living quietly on a farm on Europa, was one of the few people who remembered everything. He had refused the memory modification, arguing that someone needed to remember the full truth. "History will judge us," he said to Wanbin during their final interview. "Someday people will ask questions about the empty sectors of space. about the gaps in our historical records. They'll want to know what happened. And what will we tell them? Wanbin asked. Nothing, Junseo replied. We'll tell them nothing was ever there. That those empty spaces were always empty. That humanity has always been alone in its corner of the galaxy. The psychological impact of the war had been profound. Humanity had discovered that it was capable of absolute destruction when truly threatened. The species that had once fought limited wars over territory and resources had proven it could commit genocide without hesitation when its fundamental nature was at stake. We became something else during that war, observed Dr. Sujin in one of her final reports before memory modification. We became the thing that other species should be afraid of. But humanity had also made a choice. Rather than embrace their newfound capacity for destruction, they chose to forget it. The weapons that could erase consciousness were dismantled. The tactical knowledge that had made them so effective was deleted. Even the unity that had made victory possible was allowed to fragment as humans returned to their normal divisions and conflicts. We're choosing to become innocent again, Wanbin wrote in his final report. To pretend we don't know what we're capable of when pushed too far. The galaxy itself seemed to have accepted this convenient amnesia. Other alien species, those few that had observed the war from a distance, also chose not to speak of what they had witnessed. The humans had demonstrated something that no one wanted to acknowledge or provoke again. Trade relationships resumed. Diplomatic contacts were reestablished, but there was an unspoken understanding throughout the galaxy. Humanity was to be treated with careful respect. No one wanted to find out if they could do it again. Commander Yuri, now heading the Galactic Peace Corps, noticed the change in how other species interacted with humans. They're afraid of us, she reported to Earth's government. Not openly, but I can see it in their behavior. They agree to our terms too quickly. They avoid conflicts that they would have pursued with other species. Good, replied Director Minjung from the Department of Interspecies Relations. Fear breeds respect, and respect keeps the peace. But some humans found the galaxy's new attitude disturbing. Captain Ju Wan, who had survived the Battle of the Nexus, retired early from space service because he couldn't stand the way alien species looked at human ships. They see us as monsters, he said in his resignation letter. Maybe they're right. The empty sectors of space where veiled Thari worlds had once existed remained empty. No one colonized them, no one explored them, no one even spoke of them. They became unmarked territories on galactic maps, regions that ships avoided without really knowing why. Young humans growing up in the post-war era had no knowledge of what had happened in those empty spaces. To them, it was simply how the galaxy had always been. They knew there had been a war, but the details were vague and unimportant. It was just another conflict, history teacher Lee Sang-ho would tell his students. Humanity defended itself against an alien threat and won. That's all you need to know. And gradually, even that simple knowledge faded. The war became a footnote in history, then a rumor, then a half-remembered legend. The species that had made humans furious became nothing more than a vague shadow in humanity's collective memory. Wanbin completed his final report and sealed it in a vault that would be opened only in the event of a similar existential threat to humanity. Then he submitted to his own memory modification, choosing to forget the terrible knowledge he had carried for 50 years. Some secrets are too heavy for one person to bear, he said to the technician preparing the procedure. Let the universe Forget what we did. Let it forget what we're capable of. The modification was successful. When Wan Bin woke up, he remembered being a historian during a defensive war. But the details were gone. The names, the technology, the systematic genocide, all of it vanished from his mind. Years passed. Decades. The galaxy moved on, as galaxies do. New civilizations rose. New conflicts emerged. New threats appeared and were dealt with through normal diplomatic and military means. But in the spaces between stars, in the quiet corners of the galaxy where sensors rarely reached, there was still an echo of what had happened. A warning written in the language of empty space and missing worlds. No one remembered the name of the species that had made humans furious. No one recalled their offer of immortality through consciousness preservation. No one spoke of the crystals that had once held the minds of trillions of beings. But the universe remembered in its own way. In the careful respect that other species showed to humanity, in the empty sectors that remained uninhabited, in the instinctive fear that kept potential threats from pushing too hard, too far. The last species that made humans furious was gone. So completely that even their existence had become a myth, and perhaps that was the most terrifying victory of all, not just the ability to destroy an enemy, but the power to erase them so thoroughly that they might never have existed at all. In the silence of space, in the gaps between stars where no one would ever look, there was only emptiness. And in that emptiness, a lesson that no one remembered learning. Some species, when pushed beyond their breaking point, don't just fight back. They erase the threat entirely, so completely that no one will ever remember it existed. No one would ever speak that name again.